Now, that was the theme for the United States Coast Guard. And I want to tell you, there's just a sense of just pride, and I don't mean unbiblical pride, but just pride of every one of the services. And so this afternoon, I know I'm going to be blessed. I want to bring in our favorite Coastie, and that's because your producer of the Bill Bunkley Show and other tasks throughout the day and programming is none other than Jose Cruz, and Jose's back in our Tampa studios. Jose, just give it a little bit of a brief remembrance of why you chose the Coast Guard and what's your fondest memory of serving in the Coast Guard.
First and foremost, it's the only service of all the five that has a legitimate peacetime mission. And what I mean by that is that the primary mission of the U.S. Coast Guard is search and rescue, right? And so the other component, obviously, is maritime law enforcement out in international waters, as well as guarding our coasts here locally around the United States and our territories abroad. So the reason why I joined was because of that. It was very difficult to get in. They don't really go around asking people to join. And so it was a challenge to get accepted and make it through the 8 weeks of boot camp. And it was the best thing that I ever did. It taught me so much about leadership and honor and purpose here as an American citizen. And it's a great thing that I did. I'm glad that I did it.
Is there one experience as serving the country for the Coast Guard that stands out?
There's a couple. One that, and they're both extremes, meaning that in one aspect I got to save an entire family who were being battered up against rocky shore in Egmont Key during a really bad storm, extracted them off of their boat, which was sinking, and their dog. And so I was the guy up front basically hoisting these people out of their boat in between 10-foot swells. They were great. I'm sure that they were more violent seas in those conditions because it was just storming. We just couldn't tell. We were just bouncing really hard, so we had to time it where we would reach down and grab somebody and literally just pull them up by their arms. Luckily, I had some good people hanging on to me as I was doing that, and so that was very gratifying to pull everybody, including the dog. There's at least 5 people on that boat, and the boat was trashed by the wave action, and then the other one was a drug bust that was conducted out in the Bahamas, where I got to represent the United States in court in Miami against the crew that we apprehended, and it was marijuana that we pulled off the vessel. And we went to court to testify against them. So that was, two extremes there, both under the umbrella of serving in the Coast Guard.
I know a lot of people think of the Coast Guard as well as either the Coast Guard cutters or many of the smaller harbor boats that have the twin 250s or whatnot. But another major component of the United States Coast Guard is aviation, both with their helicopters, with the rescue swimmers, as well as the C-130s. And I'll talk about it more when we get to the Air Force. But even as we saw a few weeks ago, as they were deployed immediately to help out with the absolute devastation in Haiti, all over the region when we come into hurricanes. A lot of footage back when Katrina came into New Orleans, and along with, our Army, Navy helicopters, but also Coast Guard helicopters, the hundreds, if not thousands of people that were rescued off the roofs. And even the sad part of this weekend, we had Air Force KC-130, I think it was KC-130, I know it's 130, C-130, had one of the, I don't know, was a loadmaster or what in the back, had a parachute on, actually tumbled out of the back of the plane just off the Florida Panhandle. His chute deployed. They saw him in the water, but when the Air Force C-130 circled back to rescue him, they never could find him again, and so he's presumed dead. So we'll talk about that when we get to the Air Force. But again, it was the Coast Guard, along with the Air Force, but the Coast Guard primarily flying those grids back and forth. And, the last thing I'll say to Jose is I think one of the most impressive things is the assignment either out of, I think it's Washington, as well as Alaska. When those guys go out into the Bering Sea and they're working in what we would call hurricane conditions here, for a lot of the folks with the crab and the seafood fleet, there's some harrowing missions. So just want to give our nod to the Coast Guard this afternoon. And Jose, we thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. And also, if anybody out there wants to know what it's like, a good movie that represents that is The Guardian. I think it's a very accurate representation of what happens in the Pacific Northwest with our Coast Guard operations up there.